So we have our model, and today I want to kind of just poke on a couple of the areas that this really excels above and beyond the typical way of doing things. So one of the more complex drawings that people create are trim drawings or just standard drawings that they need, and especially if they're rotated. So if it's not square to the UCS, that can be kind of difficult or take a few more steps if you're not familiar with it. So let's go ahead and jump in and create a few drawings here, and then we'll go through and annotate, dimension, bubble, get the bill of material, all that stuff on there. So to begin with, we're going to open up our VIEWWorx tab, and I'll expand it out so we can take a peek. During our last session, we mainly focused on this named views. This time we're going to stick in the lined views section. Very similar to the previous style though, with the exception this time you just pick a line number. So instead of choosing which views you want, you just simply select the line number that you want to do with the offset value and go ahead and insert it. So once I've selected that and inserted, you can see that the box is drawn in there for this level bridle. You will notice that it's drawn square to the UCS, and it would probably make a little bit more sense to rotate this around. So let's go ahead and grab our rotate option, select that, and now we've got the ability to rotate roughly 90 degrees either direction. So we'll just do a -45 so we can get the front view facing this guy on the box. And you'll notice that we do need to stretch it out a little bit here. So I'll go ahead and grab that and stretch it out. And same thing on this side. So once you get them in there, again, as always, you can modify them, rotate them, move them, stretch them, make them a little bit larger, smaller, whatever you need to get that precise view that you're looking for. So we have that guy finished, and to create the drawing, we again just look through our list of templates that we've created. This time I'm going to do the trim BOM, and we can again set our scales either equal to the manual settings by size, template, largest. Since we already have our template created with the correct scale sizes that we want, we could go ahead and go that route. Since this is a detail, typically your template's not going to know exactly what size of detail you're working with. So I'm just going to tell it to choose the largest that it can find for each viewport. I go through, select that, and hit create. And now we have a drawing down below. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these other style drawings as well with the auto ISO. While we're in this model, we'll go ahead and just create drawings for these three lines here, which are basically the suction side of the pumps going into this vessel. So we're just going to go ahead and say insert. Just like that, we've created our views that need to go along with it, and now we select those three, choose the template we want. We're going for a 3D ISO and hit create. So a little faster process on that one. Let's say in a matter of 10 seconds we just created 3 drawings. So now let's go through and open this guy up. And as CADWorx opens these up individually, you'll see them flicker by on the screen. So here's our first drawing, our second drawing, our third to finish out the piping route going into the vessel, and then finally the trim drawing. So these 3 drawings up here are going to be very similar in the way they function, so we'll just annotate and work on one of those. But first let's go ahead and work on this trim detail in a different style here. So we can go through and tell it to auto dimension. We can tell it to go through auto annotate, bubble. So we'll go through, choose our dimension style. And since this is a trim detail where a lot of the information is going to be purchased for us, or the parts and pieces are going to be purchased for us, we don't really need all this fitting makeup. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of the fitting makeup dimensions in here. That's going to be easily taken care of with just basically going from point A to point B with installations. And we do want to get an overall on this side, so let's go ahead and kind of clear out some of these components here. Got some basic dimensions in there. We'll go into our edit dimension mode and just start stretching these guys out to clean up a little bit. So pretty quickly we can get our drawings in there, and if we want to keep one on each side, top and bottom, we can. Otherwise we can use the delete functionality. I did want to kind of show you some of the cleanup tools we have built in. One of the neat features that we've done is this delete dimension. So I can do a window around nearly everything in here, but it's only going to delete the ECE dimensions. So it makes it really easy to go through and clean up the items, especially if you've already annotated some of this or put your bubbles and marks on there already. So we've got some of our basic dimensions in there. We could add our own if we wanted to. So if we do a manual and select the items that we want to work with, dimension from here to here. So now we've got our 2 foot dimension in there. So again, you can go ahead and drag these guys out and get that stuff in. So if you want to add them, to delete them, modify them, however you guys see fit, we've got some tools to help you with that. And this default style, there's a lot of settings that go involved to annotating these and creating them. Take a look at those at some point and just jump in and figure out what works best for you guys. So the next part we want to do on here is just throw in some tags. So we'll go through and auto tag this one. This will allow us just to get all of our valve items marked so that we can quickly identify them for installation in the field. And again, these are just standard MLeaders. So if you're comfortable using the grip edit, the normal AutoCAD stretch, any of these tools that you want to go through and work with, again, it's just a very easy to use tool. Or again, we can use these align tools. So we can, oops, had too many selected there. Let's try that one more time. And so we can just line them up and call it good. So quick and easy to get this stuff dimensioned and annotated. We haven't touched really at all on the bill of material side of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And with those, we can go down to this section in here. It's also part of our BUBBLEWorx for the BOM settings. A little bit more tools on this side, but for the most part, we can get a lot of it done just by sticking inside this one palette without having to bounce back and forth. So the first options we have are choose where we want the bubbles to go. Just kind of pick and choose whichever you want your default. I'll just kind of stick with this corner right here and say let's annotate this viewport, and go ahead and throw the bill of material in there. So pretty quickly we just got the bill of material in, and again, all of these annotations and bill of material marks are linked with the model itself. So if anything changes, the long description, any of this annotation, we just simply sync it and we're ready to go back in action with that. So it's a lot of data to put on there, but again, with some of the tools that we have available to us, we can just simply come in and start spreading these guys out a little bit. And as we go through to clean up a lot of these a little bit, we might find that it's easier to put some of these bubbles in a different view. So if at any point in time you realize you're getting too many in here and you want to take some out and annotate on another viewport, we can just come in and let's say we'll take out some of this flange, bolt, and gasket on both the top and bottom here, and that'll kind of help clean that stuff up. We just come down here and say add to viewport, and it's going to go through these viewports put together and figure out what the differences are, and then realize, okay, we're missing a few bubbles. Let's go ahead and throw them in for us onto this viewport. So now we can have multiple bubbles coming from multiple viewports, all tied to a single bill of material. So you don't have to keep it all in one and keep running the command over and erasing line items from here. Just simply go through, select the bubbles you want, and add them to the bill of material, or choose the viewport and it'll go through and find the missing parts and pieces. And as we showed last week, we could come through and clean this up a little bit more and start combining some of these tags. We could combine all the bolts, flanges, and gaskets. So you kind of get the idea of how to clean this stuff up. We don't need to go through and touch on everything, but it's not going to take you long to clean these up and have a working, functioning product when you're finished. So once you've got that level done, you can just go through and now print your drawing out. And with your PDF, you've got a cleaned up drawing with some basic dimensions so that they know how to install it, make sure it's properly built before they go through and put it in. And you've got your parts and pieces put in there. So again, a little bit more cleanup would need to be done on here, but we're not spending a whole lot of time on that. Hopefully you guys kind of get the idea of what's going on. And just to demonstrate some of the other functionality in here, if we do decide that we really don't want some of this smaller stuff to be accounted for, that maybe this entire side over here, instead of building it internally, we're going to go purchase that, and somebody else is going to take care of all those components. We just erase those bubbles, and once we're finished, we just tell it to sync the BOM, and it'll go through, renumber everything, shorten the list to only include the components that are actually going to be in that parts and pieces list. So pretty quick, pretty easy, and definitely easy to modify and add components to it. So next on the list, let's go ahead and just jump into another style of drawing. So sometimes we hear from vendors and fabricators that they need something a little bit clearer than an isometric, and so we're going to take a look at just working with particular line numbers or spools, however you decide to set this stuff up. We are going to be cutting drawings based off of line numbers, but really it's whatever components you pick and choose. We can go through and annotate these things. So we'll just choose the auto dimension, and we can go through and tell it to throw in all of our bill of material components. We can annotate the line number. And let's go back and grab our tags as well, in case we've got any valves and supports that we want to get in there. So again, it's going to drop in the dimensions for everything that we have out there, all the tags, all the parts and pieces. But it doesn't take a whole lot of time to go through and start cleaning this stuff up. So if I don't want to dimension this ball valve and I want to get it stretched all the way over, just simply grab the grip and stretch it on over. Start looking at some of these cleanup guys in here. Let's go ahead and get these all black text so you guys can read that a little bit easier. So again, pretty easy to take a look at some of these tools in here and just clean them up for everything that you want to see. This area in here I might want to kind of spread them out a little bit so I can see them a little bit easier to decipher which ones I want to group and which ones I don't want to group. In this case, I really don't need this anchor in here. We only put that in there for Caesar 2, so we can get the calculations out for a stress. So if I delete that and again sync my bill of material, item 12 has now been removed from my bill of material list. You can't really buy that anchor point, so we don't need that in my BOM. And clean that up a little bit, and now again just go through and start combining items that we want to see combined. If you want to do a window, you can go through and window these guys or select them in the order you want the bubbles to appear. And it'll go through and combine those items in there. Probably don't need too many dimensions for this little drain in here, so we'll strip those out. And this is all fitting makeup, so I can strip that out. And just a few more parts and pieces to clean up here. And got a fairly clean drawing, so let's go ahead and move this guy over a bit. So maybe this is something your shop guys are looking for, or your fabricators. As you can see, it didn't take a whole lot of time to get this cleaned up and ready to go. And again, just go ahead and run our plot command there. And now we've got our PDF. Oops, looks like I forgot to turn it into hide mode. But you kind of get the idea here. So we've got our dimensions, our support locations, our support callouts, all the information that we need to go through on this guy. So I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time just kind of drilling into the details of everything, but hopefully you've been able to see what this product can do pretty quickly, pretty easily. It is a few tools put together. We've got VIEWWorx is what generates the drawings for you. DIMWorx will do all the annotation of the dimensions for you. And then we've got BUBBLEWorx to go through and add all the bill of material tags and annotation tags for component types, as well as the annotate options down below.